public information, these are just some of the public information, public records, media facilitation.
No duties are listed in that document. That was to show, well, I think I have the same thing,
yes,
just to show how they work. Ken's duties are listed in his contract extensively, and it's a lot more than what's on that page. And I will provide that contract to you as soon as we break. In fact, if somebody, you can go get it now, if somebody, I guess, can get it out of legal.
Well, I guess the question I'm building up to, as far as duplication or redundancy in positions go, could Mr. Juneau be considered a redundant employee? Looking through the staff descriptions, it is, I forgot all my names, William Allen is, his longer title and job description includes media, working with the media, delivering information to the media. Then you have, I believe, Nancy Fields, who is city secretary and involved with public records.
No, Nancy Fields is an employee of the city council. We have no direct or indirect supervision over Ms. Fields, so I won't speak to that. Okay. That's up to the council.
As far as public records receipt.
Public records are requested. Technically, the custodian of public records would be me or Ms. Fields. The charter, I think, makes it the mayor, but it can be any designate of the mayor as well, and certainly the city clerk under the city charter and by practice. She houses all the records of the meetings is here, but Nancy doesn't keep, for example, all of our records in legal, all the financial records that are kept by finance, they're upstairs. And so it would be not only onerous, but it would be impractical to ask Nancy to be the designate for those records. Interestingly enough, RT, about a year or two ago, the state passed a new law that requires us now to designate a specific person. So even though the charter says who it is, we're asked to designate it. Now, before we get into a discussion about whether the state can tell us how to do it under our charter, it doesn't matter, because I have the authority to designate as any agent of ours to do that. And that designate is Mr. Juneau. And there's a very clear reason for it. You can contact him anytime, and I know that you don't have trouble getting him.
Not at all.
Not at all. And it's one person who's always available and can answer those requests immediately. There was an article done by Mr. Robert Morgan, not R.T. Morgan, Robert Morgan, very recently. I'll say this as lightly as I can. The article is 100% inaccurate from the city. I can't speak for what happened at the school board, but from our standpoint, it's 100% inaccurate. And it's a seriously inaccurate article by Mr. Fowler. I don't know what else to tell you. I was witness to some of what occurred, and that's just not what happened. If you look at Mr. Coco's piece, for example, on the radio, we responded immediately. In fact, we responded earlier than he ended up getting the records, because we said, do you want to pick them up, or how can we get them to you? And he said, stick them in the mail, which made him go through the weekend, but really he would have been able to get them right away. And it was some lengthy documents we put together, and also some analysis to guide him through where there were other records that he could ask for. We kind of go overboard with it. But Mr. Morgan had come to ask for the charter. And this is a good example of what Mr. Juneau does. Had he just called Mr. Juneau, we would have explained to him right away, the charter's on the internet. Anybody can get it any time. And in fact, that had been related a week or so before by one of our staffers. I ended up copying the charter personally for Mr. Morgan. He was a little agitated when he got here. And so I made a copy of the charter. In fact, it ate up page 14, if I recall, in the printer, and I had to fix that. But that's where we are. So his job is to facilitate any requests you have, interviews and so forth, and there are quite a few from your folks.
Sure.
And we use Mr. Juneau for that. He is not a PR person in the sense that he is putting out PR for us, although council members and the administration have asked him to look at different long-term projects, market projects for how we're going to market a particular issue. Mr. Fowler used him sometime back at his big NACMN meeting. Ken told, look, go and do a reverse call out at the police station. So you can go to our police station and draw a picture on a screen. I've seen it done. And it will call each person in that map of Alexandria where you draw that picture. And Ken helped him through that, and he had probably the best town hall meeting he's had. Those are the things that Mr. Juneau does. Mr. Allen's job is completely different. That's the position that Jacqueline Whittle had held. It's an internal assistant to me and Ms. McGill's. He handles more citizen requests, not public records and media issues. Mr. Allen's job is to, this is what I would call it, he bird dogs situations. Somebody calls and says, my trash hadn't been picked up, I've made 4 calls to so-and-so, it's not getting done, Billy Allen takes care of that. Someone calls and says the field isn't in tip-top shape, we're having a World Series event, I've talked to so-and-so, it's not getting, not that that has been the case, because our fields are in tip-top shape, but if that happens, he's the guy who handles that. He does scheduling for us, he ensures that staff meetings are held, that information is properly documented and kept, and his job description, I think, speaks to how different his role is from Mr. Juneau's. And I would just ask you, RT, read his job description, which is in that package,
yes, sir,
and read Mr. Juneau's.
Okay,
and you don't have his, is the problem.
Exactly. Well, that's all right. Just looking at it, I don't want to read the whole thing, but it's a very long sentence. The AOC, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Assistant Chief of Operations of Constituent Relations, Public Affairs and Scheduling. The AOC shall be the head of city's public affairs office and work with city's public information personnel, the mayor's personnel, and the city's council's personnel to relate consistent information regarding city operations to other aspects of the city, the public, and the media. And so that is where I got possibly an overlap through the job description, but it just goes down to how closely the city follows that job description. And as far as you're saying, he handles everything as far as the aspects of the city and the public, but not the media?
That's correct. And of course, he helps if you make a call and he's in the office at that time and he takes it, he'll do that. You know, his job is also, we have Charles Frederick operating in this liaison position, and I have to say that last night, moving through those issues, getting that vote done was a lot Mr. Smith. I mean, that's what happened.
The legislative...
We call him, he's the liaison. It's sort of like having a floor leader. We have to have somebody that we know can talk to the gentleman down here. We can't always meet because it's a public meeting if we do it. So I can't call and say, listen, I need to talk to all of the guys about an issue that's coming up, because that's a council meeting if we do it that way. There has to be a person who can relate, build trust, work through issues that potentially are going to blow up, or potentially there's disagreement, or in most cases, I think, Sherry, just a lack of communication. So Charles is one of the communicators, and Billy Allen is one of the communicators. He talks to Lewis, quite frankly, and that's his role, to let the president of the council know, here's where the administration is going. We have attempted to have operational meetings with the president of the council for a long period of time, and I think that's back on board and getting better. We had an operational meeting with the president of council this past week, I think Thursday. Mr. Allen and I were the only 2 from the administration that attended. We met with him, and we're trying to work through these issues, the very things we're talking about today, to make people better informed, so that when we get in front of the public, we are all on more of the same page, and that's what we're trying to do.
As far as Mr. Juneau's position comparative to, and I believe this is Lamar White, correct me if I'm wrong, Assistant Chief of Policy, Assistant Operations Officer, Chief of Public Assistant Researcher?
Yes.
Okay. And again, looking at his increasing transparency through the loading of public documents on the city's website, and Channel 4 says an informational channel and electronic gateway for the city of Alexandria. Also providing the mayor with daily media briefings, discussions on various treatises, journals, periodicals. I mean, obviously an advisor type in a very media specific situation.
Not so much an advisor. His job is literally to be a policy officer. He goes through and looks at best practices across the country for a number of things, particularly as it relates to the electronic media. As you know, RT, the newspaper, there are many changes that the media is going through. Sherry, you know that. We are moving toward an electronic world. The TV folks are having to change how they do things. Lamar is about as knowledgeable in a general sense on those issues as anybody you're going to meet. He's a super bright young man. Lamar does anything from what are best practices from litter court and researching that to what are best practices for running a government access channel. He is also the chief grant writer because he's a really exceptional writer. He was a top graduate in his class at Rice. He's a prolific writer, as I'm sure everybody knows, on the blogs and everything. But what he does is he produces. And so what we try to do, RT, is show that these positions that have been out there for now 2 years are creating value. Mr. Hess's position was new. We never had a development chief in the city. But Mr. Hess has brought about $1.7 million so far in capital outlay. And we're not talking about, well, that's just his job to bring it. This was a unique set of dollars that he brought for a unique plan. Lamar has brought about at least $500,000 or been a part of $500,000 in grants. If you talk to Melinda, if you talk to anyone on the historical preservation group, you talk to anybody that deals with Lamar White and what he does and whether he's a value to the city, you're not going to find one person who will disagree with that. There's no duplication. If you look at what each person does, Mr. Juneau doesn't write grants. Mr. Juneau doesn't give me briefings on best practices. Is there overlap with all top officials in the city? Of course, when we have our staff meetings, the chief of police may say, that's a terrible idea for Mardi Gras, because Darren's got an opinion, and at the staff level, when we all meet, the division heads, they share things across a multitude of issues. So really very comfortable at this point with how this staff is shaped up, very proud of the staff, and would be happy to continue to answer questions about duplication. I will have one of these conferences only on that issue if you want, because I'm extremely comfortable in our position on that.
I do have one more question. Since talking about duplication, I heard you use the word policy, that Lamar,
yes,
I guess, is a policy person, but then also Lisa.
We propose Lisa to be the chief, Sherry, of that, and that role would be addressing, again, these NGO issues. This hasn't happened. We created a situation, Jacqueline Whittle was instrumental in that before she left, of community partnering. And it can be anything as big as the Bentley to a faith-based organization wanting to run an after-school program. Lisa, under the reorg, and that job's been out there for, I don't know, a year maybe, would be in charge of every cooperative endeavor agreement that is not in engineering services, building a road, or in Chuck's division, a contract with a lawyer. Any type of partnering, public-private partnering the city does, she is the contract monitor. In fact, we redid all the contracts. If you sign a new cooperative endeavor with the city, it is much more detailed and causes much more accountability than ever in the history of this city. We model it after some of the state agreements. They're what are called EDAP agreements and other things that we look at. But she is the contract monitor on every one of those. And what does a contract monitor do? That person ensures that the deliverables for your public dollars going out are being met by the person receiving the public money. So if we're giving away your dollars to a project we think helps the city, we figure out an ROI, return on investment, just like a private business would do. And Lisa's job is to ensure that they're meeting that. Because sometimes people get the contract and then the way the dollars are spent, of course, change over time, and then no one is monitoring that. You're not getting a program that for your public dollars is producing what the original contract said to produce. Her job is to ensure that citywide that occurs. And we're a big enough city for a policy group, Sherry, in my mind. This city ought to have a policy shop. It never has. And that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about. I organize it in 3 spheres: operations, development, and policy. And if you think I'm like Venn diagrams, of course you want them all working together, but at the same time, they're 3 distinct spheres and relationships. And we needed to have a policy shop here. Alexandria is a $200 million enterprise to run. We're the largest city in 8 or 9 parishes and serve those 8 or 9 parishes as the regional economic driver. We like to think that our policy shop we're developing would be to help the other cities too. And I'm hoping that the more we reach out and do that, the more other folks will use what we're doing to their benefit as well.
If I can just ask one more question, just regarding Lamar White, he has moved from part-time to full-time?
He did some 6 months ago.
Okay, I read the notation in one of these letters, looking at bumping him up financially.
That was part of that, what was introduced.
Yes.
Joe Page, and then moving him up. He's still, I think, in a mid-range or reasonable range. And I understand a lot of folks look at that and say, it's kind of funny. When you run for office, everybody says, get qualified staff, pay your people right, people are underpaid at the city. 2 years in, everyone says, people are being paid too much, why are you paying them that much money? And the funny thing is, the very people that said pay them right are now the people saying you're paying your staff too much. Our document speaks for itself. We're in the LMA's mid-range on these jobs. I understand that fringe is added to it. That's the case with every other public body in the region too. I think Alexandria, if you're the, as we're sort of the first to get picked on too, but then we're the first to get praised for things too. I think that the salaries are right. If you ask me on a personal level, I told the staff the other day, to their great chagrin, I thought they were all paid too much. And they all said, well, then you're way paid too much. So, I don't know where that leaves us. I know that if you look at us in a comparative sense, we're in the mid-range, not the high range. But sometimes you got to attract people, RT, to a job that you need to fill. And
Director, as you all talked about yesterday.
I think that to get someone to leave in a political climate where people don't know, nobody knows. What if I decide I'm not running for office? If a new person comes in, how does this new utility director plan a life for a 2-year gig? Why would they leave a civil service job where maybe they're an assistant director and they want to bump up, but they're protected in civil service there? Why would they leave that not knowing what we're going to decide to do over here in Alexandria? Plus, they're at will the day they walk in the door, RT. If they don't produce or get along or work with or do what we want, they're terminated, they're out of a job. So it is tough. How do you get someone to do that? You pay them a bunch of money. That's what they're going to want. They're going to want some kind of balance there. From a policy standpoint, I have to say, our view of public employees is that historically, public employees, particularly civil service, classified employees, were paid less money than their comparables in the private world for the exchange of civil service protection and their back-end benefits, retirement, money paid in the system by the city. That has been the historical model of civil service versus the private world. And so when you see us move the whole baseline up because we're trying to now get in line with everybody, you're going to see some pushback from the public, because the public says, I saw someone driving in a vehicle that shouldn't have been. What are the gas is out of control. And I think that's a natural thing, and it's a thing we should discuss openly, and I think that's what we're doing. That's the purpose of that document. It's on the internet, people can get it. I understand there's going to be some disagreement. People are going to say someone should make $65,000. A lot of times they're going to say that because they may say, well, I don't, why should they? I understand that. It's a serious question. These meetings are open. People should come here, and they should exercise their rights on that.
I guess I'll just end with this. So are we saying that there's no consideration to lay off Von Jennings, Joe Page, those 3 people, those names, those positions? Is that what we're saying? That not only did the town talk get that wrong about the duplications, are we saying that you are not considering that when you look at the scheme of things and the positions and the budget and all of that, that you are not?
I can never say we're not considering something, Sherry. That depends on the council's passage of different items. If the council says, despite your best efforts and what you say you've done in achieving no duplication, which we've never thought we were duplicating, but if that is the position of the council and they say, we're not approving this, then I have to consider who best works on our team. And if there's consolidation of job duties, although we don't think they're duplicative, but the council says, we want this job to do both of those, well, then of course, it's either cut some other position, because we have to live within the budget, whatever it is. It's either cut out another position or do that. In fact, those are saying the same things. I mean, there will always be an ebb and flow and a tug and pull with employment issues. That's just going to happen. I think that right now, where it looks like we're going, and I hope you're not cursing me with now, I'm going to say this and the council's going to watch this and say we're not doing that. I think where we're going is that the whole reorg is going to be basically approved. If that changes in the next week, particularly after I made that statement, then of course, Sherry, I will have to deal with what positions are still out there. Right now, Mr. Page is in his HR position. He's proposed to be in a different position. Right now, Ms. Jennings is serving in her position. There is no proposal for that position to cease or whatever. But if the council doesn't approve the whole reorg, and by the way, reorgs are voted up and down. They're not supposed to be, that's 411, I think, you know, they're supposed to be up or down. We have to consider what we're going to do. So I can't answer your question fully till I know what the council's action will be. And I think we'll know that in about, in the next 2 weeks.
What's the budgetary impact of the entire reorg?
I don't know exactly. It's in, I think it was item 9 in the last book. I think there was a 55,000.
And there's a budget amendment submitted.
There's a budget amendment. I think it's tab 9 in the book. It's RT, you got to remember this. We proposed, and that's all in your document, how many people we proposed that are new. Mr. Hess was new. Ms. Jennings was new. We've never had a workforce coordinator. We've never had a specific development officer. We listed the new ones in that document. But you have to remember, we also knocked out some positions that previously existed. We knocked out the capital projects coordinator, which was a highly paid position. So that was recaptured dollars. By moving EEO like that and then not filling another job we can fill, we'll save there. So what I told y'all in the beginning was this was budget neutral, all of this, except for Joe Page, for what had been pre-approved. Now, if your question today is, well, Jacques, where are we on Ned's last budget and yours with mayoral assistance? We added jobs, but I've said that from day one, that they were operating on a skeleton crew and we were going to add these jobs. Those jobs have been through, Sherry, 2 budget cycles and approved. So it depends on how you want to state the question. It was budget neutral, but for Joe Page and the increase in that other position, which isn't much. But if you go back to compare 2 different administrations, well, then that's a different question. If you look at the height of, and we're studying that right now, when the height of folks were employed by the Randolph administration, that number is going to be different to the end. And I've talked to Ned specifically about it in the last 2 weeks. And he told me straight up, Jacques, I wasn't gonna, this is, if you know that you're retiring and moving out, that's not when you go and fill a bunch of jobs. Well, I say that. In politics, that happens a lot. People go and fill a bunch of things on the way out the door. He didn't do that. He didn't do that. And so that leaves us where we are. That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
I will ask, this has nothing to do with that, but is it possible for, to have packets prepared for the press, like when we go to school board meetings and other meetings, that there are packets that includes information, like things that you would give to the council. I guess we'll have to ask the council to do that when they submit things, but it just helps us to move along if we can have documents that you're looking for. Of course, I know that there are extenuating circumstances, but as much as possible we could have.
And Sherry, everything that we present is in the book, so you'll rarely see us passing it out. But I think what we can do is do this. We have a general idea of what you guys think are controversial or issues.
It's not about controversy.
What we can do is we'll start at least preparing or pulling out. The administration will do it. I can't ask the council, but we'll start ahead of time saying, Here are the issues that we all know, they've either been discussed in the paper or somewhere else or on the news as controversial, not necessarily controversial, as important spending or other items, and we'll try to get them a day ahead to you, which gives you the ability to come into the council meeting and say here. What I don't want to do is, then that's us creating what we think you think would be those issues. So if there can be some, a line kind of there, that's fine. I don't want that to be the story where they thought this was the important thing. This is just going to be a courtesy we'll provide and work through with you.
Just let me know if you have something that you.
Okay.
And anything in addition we'll include in the package. But we have a general idea. You aren't interested in what couplings we're going to buy for the week.
No, not couplings.
You're not interested in that,
Though I don't know. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions for anybody else? All right, that was 1:45 till noon. I'm going to get in trouble there.